You've hit play on the Screen Companion, where we'll help you pick something for movie night. Today we're talking sci-fi action films. Judge Dredd from 1995, The Fifth Element from 1997, and The One from 2001. Andrew, what is The One about?
The One is about a bad guy played by Jet Li going around the multiverse, killing the other Jet Lis so he can absorb their power and become the super strong, super fast, singular Jet Li. And he's going into the last universe to kill Jet Li there, but this is a good Jet Li. He's trying to kill the good Jet Li, and the multiverse police are on the case.
John, do you think Jet Li brings the goods as a leading man? Do they have him do enough acting so that it doesn't feel like he's just a featured stunt guy in this?
At the beginning of the movie, I thought so, but as the movie went on, I started to think so less, and then by the end it felt like, no, he wasn't doing enough to differentiate Gabe and Yulaw.
What do you think they could have done?
Gone the Jean-Claude Van Damme route and have them dressed differently, maybe? Because at one point they were wearing the same outfit. By one point, I mean the whole second act.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're spoiling what I'm going to get into later.
Oh, okay. I'm glad I could take your legs out from underneath you.
Pat, what do you think of the premise? Do they explain it to your satisfaction?
I would say yes and no on that question, because I like a movie that kind of is like a world-building type movie, where you kind of give people just a little bit, and then you let the world be built around that. I also like it when you do explain what's going on. I think this movie did a good job at giving you that little bit of a nibble, and then bringing you right into the story as it was going on. But it wasn't so captivating that I didn't feel like I was really pulled in by it.
And does that come down to a lack of explaining the whole multiverse idea? Or did you want more of how bad Jet Li was absorbing people's souls?
I would say, I think it was just, I just don't think it was explained very well. We understand the multiverse a lot better now, 20 years later, with a lot of studios doing that, going down those storylines. But I think of like a Star Wars intro. You read the scrolling text, and that kind of brings you into the story, and then boom, you're dropped into the middle of a battle scene or something like that. And I think this movie tried to do something like that. It just wasn't as interesting, in my opinion. I don't know.
Andrew, what's the ratio of sci-fi to action? And how do you feel the two work or don't work together in The One?
I'd say the ratio was much more action than sci-fi. I think the sci-fi was all given to you in huge doses. Like, it's all in the beginning because you're in this different universe, and then all of a sudden you're in essentially our universe, kind of, and then Jason Statham with hair comes in and gives you a bunch of exposition of sci-fi, and then it's a bunch of action, and then the ending of the movie is sci-fi. They don't go hand in hand. It seems like just more of an excuse to pit Jet Li against Jet Li.
John, does the action feel more Western or Eastern influenced? And what do you think is the difference?
Eastern action influenced by Western action movies. We're the gunplay guys. We got the guns, they do the kicks, they have the martial arts. A lot of it was martial arts, but a lot of it was also gunplay. Half the movie is Jet Li trying to get to a gun to shoot somebody. I think it's more Western, yeah.
The only martial arts we get come from Jet Li facing off with himself. Do you guys recall any other significant fight scenes where they didn't use guns or knives?
Oh, well, I mean, he used guns against Jason Statham's partner, but they kind of had like a fight sequence. You had a lot of Jet Li beating people up in martial arts. But in terms of one-on-one fights, it isn't until he fights himself.
When he kills Delroy Lindo, half that fight scene was close up on feet because they're pretending that Delroy Lindo knew martial arts enough to kick with Jet Li.
Andrew, what themes do you think the premise is good for? Did you see them apply it in any thought-provoking ways beyond simply setting up the idea of a multiverse?
The premise had me, because I'm like, okay, the multiverse, like this is, nowadays with especially superhero movies, everything's multiverse this, multiverse that. It was interesting to see something, oh, it's multiverse from 2001. I want to see how they do it. And I think they did it just fine. They had me before bald Jason Statham was like, oh, he's going around the multiverse. Okay, cool. You have a certain window. He is explaining enough of the science behind it. And then he's just like, he's killing people and taking their life force. It's like, well, now you lost me. Because I don't know how is that science. And so it was weird because it tries to quantify the human spirit in a way, and it gets a little mystical when you can't do that. He steals their life force by killing them. I don't understand how that works. I didn't feel like that was explained enough. That could have been something to really sink your teeth into.
Did you get Highlander vibes off of this?
I didn't until you just said it, and yeah, it is very Highlander. At least with Highlander, that was just a story across time. That wasn't universe. Granted, it's been like 15 years since I've seen it, but I don't remember it going from world to world. So that makes more sense, because it also had mystical elements to it. That's why Highlander gets a pass, because it's more of a fantasy film than science fiction.
Sounds like you're disregarding The Quickening.
Everybody disregards The Quickening.
With sci-fi, I feel like I don't want to say there's more of a standard of realism. Just to say, like, casually, he steals their life force. What does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean?
I have no idea what it means. Pat, what do you think of the intentional funny moments in this film?
I didn't find anything intentionally funny. I don't know.
Whoa. Jet Li with dreadlocks?
Yeah, the multiple Jet Lis was interesting. The part where I laughed out loud was when he crushed the cop with 2 motorcycles.
Yeah.
I laughed because the graphics were so bad, or they just haven't aged well at all.
I remember that from the trailer.
It was meant to be comically funny.
John, did you see this when it first came out?
I did, yeah.
So how old were you?
2000, I would have been 18, right?
2001.
Yep, yeah. I was 18 when it came out. The soundtrack was primarily nu metal, but it wasn't any of the hits except for Drowning Pool. So it's like...
Oh, thank you for reminding me of that, John.
Yeah, everything. Like, so all the music was just off. And like, I don't know any of these songs.
Metal doesn't apply to every scene. It doesn't make every scene better. And maybe 15, 20 minutes in, Jet Li is driving a vehicle, and there's metal. You're not making this any more interesting by playing metal music over it.
I hate movies that have done that trend of the nu metal soundtracks. It's so bad.
And I love nu metal at the time. I still have, a soft spot in my heart for it, but like, it did not work. I don't think it worked then. I don't remember it working then at all. Going in, it was like, the soundtrack's going to be awesome, and then it's just like, oh, I don't recognize that one. I don't recognize any of these songs. None of them are from the hits.
So then, John, you and I did a podcast that included The Matrix. Would you say the music worked better in that film?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rage Against the Machine works in everything, Frank.
Yeah, come on.
Do you think it's just because they picked stronger artists, more popular artists?
Especially with The Matrix, it wasn't just nu metal. There was a little techno in there and whatnot. Whereas this movie was just pure, we spent all our money on Drowning Pool, so we have to get the cheaper B-side songs for the rest of them.
Let's not forget they did play Last Resort at the very end, the prison universe, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Down with the Sickness.
Oh, I forgot about Down with the Sickness.
Yes.
That was so awful, dude. That was the worst.
Couple Papa Roaches.
That was the worst part of the whole damn movie.
It felt like the soundtrack was fighting Jet Li for screen time.
Become an active listener by joining the Screen Companion. Subscribe on YouTube, hit us up on X, and our Facebook group. Let us know your favorite episodes and what topics or films we should tackle next. Further support the host by buying his novel, Self-Recognition, a futuristic detective story, available on Amazon in print and digital formats. Now, back to the show.
I watched half of it last night, and I watched the rest this morning, and I blocked out Down with the Sickness already. It was used terribly. It made no sense, because it's a close-up of, like, a mouse's balls, and then it blows up, and then you hear just the, oh, wah, ah, and then Jet Li's going crazy. I was laughing then, and I'm laughing now.
Why did the rat have such big balls? Why did they have to show a rat with giant balls? I remember watching that scene, I'm like, what the fuck?
I almost paused it to see if they tied the string to its tail or its nuts, because it was so close. I didn't get it. Like, they could have gotten any other mouse, but they got the one with the biggest sack, and then played Disturbed. It was the worst.
That's the producer walking around and like, oh, look at the balls on that rat. Hire that one. He's going to be a star.
There has to be some film class that has shown the one, and you know they must have gotten into ball talk.
You can't watch that movie and not come out thinking like, man, the rat had big balls.
What is the significance of those balls, everybody? Tell me, what themes is this wrestling with?
It represents the two Jet Lis having massive power.
Oh, in one universe, Jet Li's not even human. He's just a rat with black hair and giant nuts.
The nuts grow bigger with every Jet Li that dies.
I love it. I want to see that movie.
This should have been the last Jet Li he killed, too, because he can't fight back. He's just now stuck on his own balls.
Well, getting to something a little more positive about the film. Pat, what was your favorite action scene?
The end was pretty good with Last Resort when he declares, I still will be the one. And then he's just beating the shit out of all the prisoners like he just hasn't given up yet. I thought that was interesting because it kind of like leads us up to there might be a sequel or something like that. Obviously there wasn't. It leads up to like there could be. So that's kind of interesting.
That was an area of Jet Li's acting that they should have mined a lot more. That end scene sticks with me because you've got an Asian dude who, when I see him in interviews, he seems soft-spoken, very nice, reserved. Having that guy telling a bunch of convicts, I am not your bitch, you are mine. Why didn't they have him do more of that in the rest of the movie? That would have been awesome. John, besides the action beats, is there another aspect of the filmmaking you liked?
I don't know. I generally don't know. Delroy Lindo. Everything he did is amazing because he's awesome.
I agree.
You know, Harry, nobody's proved that what happened to you is a bad thing.
You've killed 123 people. I'd say that was a very bad thing, you law. Plus, you don't know what would happen if you killed this one. His death could destroy the whole system, but I guess that doesn't matter.
I know. Everything must be balanced. Blah, blah, blah. What do you think would happen?
Some people think you'd explode. Some people think you'd implode.
You're missing one.
Some people think you'd become a god.
That's the one.
In a movie that feels like it was put together just for Jet Li to show us his skills, there was one detail I really liked in general terms, not like Special Olympics terms. The effect of them being sucked up into the multiversal portal going between worlds. I really appreciated the detail that they seemingly get pulled apart and it's agony and it's not tranquil like being beamed up in Star Trek.
I was thinking about Star Trek because after the other two, I was thinking a lot about practical effects. And this just had the CG, which I would definitely call issues at certain points. And I feel like they could have tried some practical effects with that transportation, but then, like you said, they were definitely going for, oh crap, this hurts. And I don't know if you could have made that with practical effects.
You could have, but it would have taken more talent than was available to this production.
That's fair, yeah. As a martial arts epic.
Andrew, what's your biggest criticism?
I just feel like this could have been a PG-13. All they needed to do was clean up the language a bit, because the violence was pretty bloodless. When I see an R-rated action flick, it doesn't have to be like Reanimator level gory for me to earn its R rating, but when Jet Li's missus was shot, there was just a little bit of blood after it. A lot of the blood was on the walls like afterwards. The guy who gets clapped by the motorcycles, I just feel like the violence could have been a little bit more graphic, because then you could make evil Jet Li turn him into more of a brutal villain. Maybe if evil Jet Li was just killing a bunch of dudes, make him bloody, because he's using his fists, right? He can punch a hole in someone. Make his face covered in blood so you can also differentiate him a little easier when they're wearing the same damn clothes. At this point, they should have just cleaned up the language and made it a PG-13.
I think they wasted a big strength that comes with alternate you type stories. Not once do the two Jet Lis take a moment to compare notes on their lives and where they deviated. No envy of the other person or justifying the course of life that one took over the other. For all the limited ways they use the two characters, it's like the chief reason they did it was so they only needed to pay one actor to play multiple roles. And the really sad part is that this movie is under 90 minutes long. Without credits, it might be 82 minutes. They had the room to expand on the characters, at least 2 or 3 more scenes to touch on the enormity of meeting another you. Pat, does the ending feel like a sequel hook, or is it self-contained to you?
No, I definitely think that they did it with the intention of setting up a sequel. I think the idea is to launch Jet Li to a new audience. Hence calling it Jet Li's the One. You're trying to introduce this guy. And I remember when I was younger, it was talked about pretty big too. So it definitely felt like it was set up for a sequel with the way that it ended and the way that it was marketed. I would absolutely think that they were wanting to make multiple films in the series.
They didn't realize how prescient they were. It was the one.
But
I know that always gets you, John.
Puns!
As I was ruminating on sci-fi action as a subgenre, and whether or not it can truly incorporate the best of both worlds, I had to take a step back and ask myself, what is science fiction? Stories that ponder humanity using science as a backdrop. If a story uses time travel as a plot device, I'm not going to count it as science fiction unless the time travel plays into philosophy or a personal struggle someone goes through. The science, or pseudoscience, has to relate directly to the drama, playing it in a way that would be impossible without that science aspect. So with that as my definition of science fiction, Andrew, do you believe it can mix with action without undercutting either genre?
the special thing with science fiction in general, I believe it can intermix with any of the major genres pretty seamlessly when done right. We always go to Star Trek as our examples, where you have Star Trek II, which is humanity-based, but also it's a classic submarine action thriller set in space. And then you have Star Trek IV, which is pretty damn funny, and it has this backdrop of science. I guess to steer away from Star Trek, you have Alien with the horror element. Sci-fi, it can blend with any other major genre very well and seamlessly, even enhance or allow us to do different things and different angles. With horror and Alien, I mean, I guess you could make it a fantasy horror film, but you couldn't really make it in, like, you know, that's not something you could set in modern times because we don't have those types of things. So you make it an Alien and then sci-fi, and there you have a classic.
Supposing I'm willing to count the horror stuff in Alien as being the action, what ideas would you say Alien is playing with through its science fiction?
That whole idea of you really don't know what's out there. What did they happen to find is just the most horrifying creature in existence. I guess within your definition of sci-fi, I guess Alien doesn't really blend. But I guess my definition of sci-fi isn't as... I don't want to say strict, it's just more like loosey-goosey with it.
Oh yeah, Andrew. When I think of loosey-goosey, I think of you. Your goose has the least amount of loose, okay? John, only because I do have you here tonight.
Thanks.
Off of what Andrew said, out of the first 6 Star Trek movies, which ones would you consider sci-fi action? Feel free to say none of them, just so I can have you arguing with Andrew.
I do want to say none of them, but he does have a very good point about the submarine battles. That is 2. 5 almost is a full-blown action movie.
That one's very adventure-heavy.
Yeah.
6 is a tough one because it has great action sequences. It has the Klingon ship invasion and assassination, but it does have a great spaceship battle at the end of the movie. That's more of a thriller almost. That's kind of like almost like a Cold War thriller film, so I don't know if I'd call that action.
I think Cold War thriller is a perfect example. They even talk about only Nixon could go to China.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what they were going for.
Pat, what's the best ratio of sci-fi to action for you? Like, how often do you want to reflect versus seeing things blow up?
Oh man, that's a great question. I like a good 50-50 mix. I think as audiences evolve, you seem to get more action and less dialogue or less substance, less substantive plot, you know what I mean? But I like a good mix where you can actually have logical conversation and then maybe an action sequence or multiple action sequences. I do like it when there is actually substance to a film as well. I think 50-50.
I may be stepping into a hornet's nest here. I think Star Trek First Contact, if you want a ratio, I think that has the perfect ratio. Good amount of action, and it has a lot of good heavy themes in it.
I'll agree with that 100%. I think if you want a good Star Trek movie, you got to have a Moby Dick reference. It's got to be Moby Dick somehow.
Oh yeah, it has to be in there, yeah.
I agree, that movie is excellent.
That's too much action for my taste.
Frank.
Of course.
Getting into The Fifth Element, that finds veteran-turned-cabbie Corbin Dallas caught in the middle of an intergalactic prophecy, where a giant molten ball of evil appears every 5,000 years and wants to destroy the Earth. I've also heard it might want to destroy the universe. It seems to flip-flop on how much evil it wants to commit. It's the year 2214. There are 200 billion people living on the planet, and New York City has flying cars and rocket ships. If Dallas is going to save it all, he'll need to team up with the Supreme Being, a genetically engineered, thousands of years old, Ukrainian-American chick named Lilu. Oh, and throw in Gary Oldman as the bad guy, why not? So, Bruce Willis has done very few science fiction roles. Pat, do you think he should have tried more, or did he correctly know his limits?
You know, it's funny. I think he's a great actor, and his action slash, and I think this kind of goes back to our action slash science fiction discussion, in that he does a great job in this movie, and I think he's done a great job in other science fiction movies. I don't know if we qualify the Unbreakable movies as science fiction or not, and I feel like those are sort of science fiction. I'm not sure. And then 12 Monkeys was another one that I was thinking of. That's more traditional science fiction, but I think he's got a lot of range. He does a great job in The Fifth Element, and a good amount of action in this film too, and that plays to its strengths. So I think they did a great job in the casting of him for this lead role.
So I guess it sounds like you'd say you wish he had done more science fiction?
Oh yeah, I'd love to have seen more science fiction. I thought he was great in that. 12 Monkeys is definitely an underrated film in my opinion, but it was good as well. I'd love to see him done more in his career for sure.
What?
Just found a picture of you.
Oh, how do I look?
Like shit.
Must be an old picture. Listen, you gotta bring me in your hack for a 6-month overhaul.
Negative.
ASAP.
I don't need one.
Hey, you forgetting who sat next to you for 1,000 missions? I know how you drive.
Finger. I drive a cab now. Not a space fighter.
Okay, so tell me, how many points you got left on your license?
At least 50.
You know what? You gotta learn how to lie better. See you tonight.
John, what do you think of the premise? Does it make sense, or at least while you're watching the flick?
I think so. I feel like this came out just at the right time where everybody on the planet knew what the fifth element was going to be love because of Captain Planet. You know, earth, wind, water, fire, and heart. It's always heart, right?
I guess I prefer Lilu over that Indian kid.
Oh, by a lot, yeah, don't get me wrong.
Wasn't he South American, you racist?
We gotta look that up, yeah.
I don't know if you want to keep that in the podcast.
I feel like that should stay.
No, I'm keeping that in.
No, he'll keep it in if I'm wrong.
No, that's not how I do things.
Total sidebar on Captain Planet, by the way. I love the villains in Captain Planet because they literally serve no purpose other than to be villains. Like, we're going to dump toxic waste into the ocean because it's fun.
It's like, how does this make profit? It doesn't! Ha
It's so good. It's like every episode of Captain Planet, yeah, bad guys just destroying the Earth. Not because it makes profit or anything like that, but just because they enjoy it.
I love a good evil for the sake of being evil villain.
Andrew, what do you think of Mila Jovovich as Lilu? Does she stand out as much as her orange hair?
She was very believable as this out-of-place alien creation. The way she was speaking, like, none of it made sense, but she's trying to communicate. I didn't think it was anything spectacular, but I think it definitely, like, it seemed like she was born yesterday in a way. She was born like half an hour ago for most of the movie. But yeah, I think she did perfectly fine.
I see her as one of those 90s action heroines. Andrew, what do you think of the ones we got back then? Let's say from Sarah Connor to Lara Croft. What do you think sets them apart from, like, what we have now?
If I'm being honest, I don't feel like the 90s did a lot of that stuff differently. I don't think of it in terms of they do it differently, really. If I really stop to think, I feel like it's pretty much the same. Maybe they're not, because I wanted to say maybe they're more fully fleshed out characters, but not really.
I realize it's not the perfect example of modern filmmaking, but at the time of this recording, Borderlands came out fairly recently, and I've watched some reviews on it. From what they all seem to agree on, it's like the heroine in that, Cate Blanchett's character, doesn't really go through anything, doesn't show a lot of vulnerability, which I can only go off of the reviews. I have not seen the movie, I could be wrong. But going off of that, if I think about a Sarah Connor, yeah, I think of her being badass and being shredded, but then I also think of her in a mental hospital. And then with Lilu, sure, she can probably trade blows with Jet Li, but she also cries. She has a naivety through some of the movie. And I don't know if that makes them more fleshed out, but I think it balances the scale a bit more between showing them taking on a dozen bad guys with them having weaknesses.
I guess when I think of modern action movies, for the Shining example, I would think of like Furiosa. I haven't seen the new one. I mean, like when Charlize played her, that was a very fleshed out character. The easy pickings is Rey from Star Wars. What was her name? From Rogue One. She also had flaws though, so that's the thing. Like Rey kind of didn't. So when I stop to think about it, I feel like Rey's not the standard. most characters have some flaw, whether it's played up or not. So I don't know. I don't feel like they really do it that much differently. I think naivete, that's less of what you see nowadays. And it might just be more of like a troubled past. That's kind of like the big difference.
John, what is the ratio of sci-fi to action in The Fifth Element?
I feel like 2/3 of this movie is sci-fi, and only about 1/3 is action. There's some solid storytelling in this that isn't just gunfights.
Do you think they express any deep thoughts when it comes to themes?
How society is headed? Yeah, that's something to think about. The evil aliens there, I feel like there's something they could have got into, but they just glossed over it. Because they were, scattered to the wind, I think was the term used by humans, but no one was the problem. Somehow Lilu missed a bunch of horrible stuff in the alphabet until she got to war. Skipped over genocide.
Diaspora.
Yeah, horrible stuff. Till she got to war, and then all of a sudden she's like, is humanity worth saving? I don't know. That felt very heavy-handed.
On the topic of themes, I think they do the most out of tonight's movies in The Fifth Element. This idea of man versus nature and how the future is beset by so much technology, but people will ignore nature at their own peril. None of the 5 elements used to save the world are gold or lead. Space frigates and Roombas won't save us from evil. Like in that scene where Gary Oldman as Zorg is choking and the priest has to help him. The guy presses every button on his console and every doodad in the office pops up. But the only thing that'll unstick the cherry in his throat is a good slap on the back. Do I wish it was brainier? I always do, but it felt like the film had some thoughts. Pat, what do you think of the action? And where do you think it is on the Bruce Willis scale?
I love the action in this movie, specifically on the cruise ship. I think that's one of the greatest scenes with Chris Tucker narrating as they're going through, blowing shit up, which is fantastic. So I think it's very good. I'd rank it on the Bruce Willis scale. Obviously, the Die Hard franchise is pretty high up there, but this is probably in the top 3 for sure.
You mentioned Chris Tucker. Forgive me for assuming things about your viewing experience, Pat. Let me go on a limb and say perhaps you think Chris Tucker's comic relief was better than Rob Schneider and Judge Dredd? If so, why do you think that is?
Chris Tucker did a great job of being helpless, but he was comically helpless. I think Rob Schneider was just useless and not funny. If I was Judge Dredd, I would have judged him and left him for dead on the side of the road. That was my opinion. But I thought Chris Tucker was excellent. And I did not like Rob Schneider's performance at all in Judge Dredd.
That makes 4 of us.
Andrew, staying on Chris Tucker for a moment, do you think it just comes down to the type of humor that perhaps none of us are into the way they had Rob Schneider doing his shtick, or do you think it's something else?
Well, I think Chris Tucker fit into the movie a lot better. This movie was way funnier than I thought it would be. It really borders on comedy at times. Like sight gags even. Almost all the characters are funny in their own way, and then Chris Tucker comes out as this obnoxious radio DJ. He fits in so perfectly. That to me would be the biggest difference between this versus Judge Dredd. Rob Schneider and Judge Dredd was just hey, we need someone who's really funny, who was really funny in the 90s. Okay, we can't afford them, let's get Rob Schneider. Chris Tucker was late 90s, top of his game. It was a role where he and his humor fit in, because the movie at times is pretty ludicrous. It really plays into that, and so he fit in. I knew Chris Tucker was in it, and I'm thinking, man, he can be kind of grating, but no, his character was fine. It worked within the world.
Andrew, did you read interviews with Rob Schneider Because that's what he said. According to him, they wanted Joe Pesci, but he was too expensive.
No, I don't read anything Rob Schneider. I wouldn't read a Rob Schneider interview. And I'm going to be honest with you, Joe Pesci sounds like he would be also absolutely terrible in Judge Dredd. I like Joe Pesci just fine, but I think they just didn't need a comic element to it. But 90s action, they kind of always want some type of comedic relief.
John, let me bounce an idea off of you, because it just popped into my head as we're talking about this. Because I don't want to just boil it down to Rob Schneider sucks. I want to find a more academic reason than that. Because both characters largely serve the same purpose in their respective stories. Is it possible one of the downsides was that the movie literally opens with Rob Schneider's character, whereas Chris Tucker, it takes like an hour before he pops up?
I think that's one of the problems. It's also, like Andrew said, the character Rudy Rod fit in to The Fifth Element. Props to Chris Tucker. He's also a way better actor than Rob Schneider. You're going to have that obnoxious DJ. You're going to have that beautiful joke where you forget halfway through the super secret mission that he is broadcasting it live across the universe. Whereas Rob Schneider was just literally in the background. You could have had a robot that just said, "Oh snap," every 20 minutes, and it would have been better.
I heard him say that he was reticent to take on the part in Fifth Element because how flamboyant it was, but he wanted to work out of his comfort zone. I can see where, in his career in the 90s, one role definitely stands out among all the rest, and that's him with his poodle haircut. So this is directed by Luc Besson. John, do you see any shades of French cinema in it? And besides Gary Oldman's participation, do you notice any connections to The Professional filmmaking-wise?
No, not really. There's no jump cuts. The only cigarettes in this movie are all filter. The message of the cigarettes is stop smoking, whereas, French cinema romanticizes the cigarette. I guess there's the anti-war sentiment and the themes, but that's about it. It feels like a big American film. Luc Besson. I saw this before The Professional as a child growing up.
I gotta mention that Gary Oldman famously does not understand The Fifth Element. He's not a booster for it. That made me think, I've seen him not deride the film, but just be very honest about his participation in it, and that it was a quid pro quo situation because Besson had been a producer on something Oldman directed, so he felt like he owed him a favor, and so when he got asked to be the villain in this, he's like, okay, I'll do it. I thought, was he as honest back on the original press tour? And he never denigrated it. He never outright said at Cannes, this movie sucks. Please don't watch it. I'm embarrassed by it. But what he did say, because he does chew around the edges of the issue, I heard him say at a press conference for the movie at Cannes, he goes, this isn't David Mamet. And he says at some point you just have to give yourself over to the project because it's just so big. In his body language, Mila Jovovich is sitting right next to him, and she smirks, and I think it's because she knows what he's really saying. But I appreciate that. I don't think he bullshitted people at the time in a way that I think a lot of modern projects, people involved with them, they turn out to be such stinkers, but they praise it so much, and then I lose some respect for them after it comes out because I know they were lying out their ass. Andrew, what was your favorite action scene?
It would have been the stuff on the cruise ship. We had the action sequence of the car chase, but I feel like there wasn't a whole lot of action in the movie until the cruise ship stuff. That's when the movie went into the sci-fi action territory. Like I said earlier, I would have almost called this a sci-fi comedy up until the cruise ship. It had its serious moments, but this movie was pretty wacky and funny. But once that cruise ship action started, it was top tier.
John, did the visual effects of the New York cityscape work for you?
Yeah, because they didn't overuse it. They didn't oversaturate it. They're just like, this is a giant city. I don't want to use the term mega city.
For legal reasons.
For legal reasons. But it worked because it looked like a lived-in city.
Something about this and Judge Dredd, they marry CGI with miniatures, and a lot of the CGI looks fake, and my brain recognizes that, but when you offset it with real photographed things, for some reason it works more, and I like the style and look of it. I looked up how they did the effects for New York City. They actually built a 70 by 40 foot miniature environment, and the average height for a skyscraper was 22 feet.
Holy shit.
And they have photos of the artists standing among the buildings. And yeah, the buildings are much taller than they are. And it's like, oh, how much fun was that, using motion control, shooting through that set that they said took up a big part of a warehouse.
Practical effects, man. I miss practical effects.
At one point when I was watching it, I thought to myself, man, I wonder what the budget of this movie was. And I looked it up, and it said it was like $90 million. Man, $90 million, like nowadays that's not a whole lot, but I have to remember this was 1997 this came out. This is an expensive movie, but it looks so good, and they used every dollar of that budget. I think it was well spent.
Pat, what do you think about the score?
You're not going to find me complaining about this movie in any sense of it. I think the music was good. It was well timed. You can feel the tension as the scenes are ratcheting up. So I thought just a great job overall.
As far as genres, I feel like it went all over the place like a Bjork album. How the opera scene perfectly represents the movie, because she starts singing that Big Blue Alien. It starts out traditional, and the talent's there to be traditional, but then she, like the film, thinks throwing in techno music and 90s cool is ultimately better. I'm not knocking it for that. I don't know if it's the Frenchness. This movie feels like a quirk magnet. It wants to throw everything that they find in the pantry into a pot, and somehow what they came out with is tasty. That being said, John, I hope I can count on you. Give me a criticism of it.
I think the biggest criticism of this film, the good guy and the bad guy never meet. I don't even think they know of each other, right? Gary Oldman and Bruce Willis have 0 scenes together.
If they found a longer cut of this movie and it turns out they had shot stuff of them together, how would the interplay be?
It'd probably mirror Die Hard with Hans Gruber and John McClane. Bruce Willis is just so good at that lower class. I don't want to say lower class, but I'm going to.
Working class.
Working class.
Yeah, he's the everyman.
Yeah, he's the everyman, the reluctant hero in this. He doesn't want to do it, but he's going to because it's the right thing to do. Whereas Zorg is the Hans Gruber type of just doing these awful things, and at the end of the day, it's for money.
Would it shock you that at the time Gary Oldman was thinking a lot about Ross Perot, and he put that into his performance?
No, it wouldn't shock me. That's a very old-fashioned sentence. No, I would not be shocked at all.
My criticism would be I don't like the timeline of events, because the actual plot unfolds within 24 hours. It makes the characters feel less than three-dimensional because they're constantly on the move to save the world, and because the sequence of events is so compressed, it creates a back-breaking amount of coincidences. Where does Lilu get reconstituted? New York City. Where does Dallas live? New York City. Where does the priest live? New York City. When I think about how pat the circumstances are for the characters to meet and get to where they're going, I'm reminded that the director came up with the initial story when he was a teenager. It reminds me of the comics I made as a kid. The hero does this. then goes there and does that. The end.
You tell a compelling story, Frank.
Andrew, name one or two things you'd adjust to make it better.
It's a tough one. I guess there.
I would say more gratuitous nudity.
Oh my god, in HD, I couldn't believe it. You saw everything. It was only for a couple seconds, but damn.
I guess the ending I didn't really like how they were boning in the pod. It was very James Bondish, which I can kind of appreciate, but it was also weird. Why would you put them in the same medical pod? You know what I mean? Like, that's what's weird. Maybe a little less quirky. There were some points where I was kind of like, oh, okay, like, I could do without this. But I feel like at the end, though, it still all meshed really well. You could probably shave maybe 5 or 10 minutes out of it and not really affect the story too much. But other than that, I thought it was pretty great.
Fine. Then moving on to our final film, Judge Dredd. Because I know you got plenty for me here, Andrew. Stallone plays the law, a.k.a. Joseph Dredd. Judge, jury, and executioner in a future mega-city beset by rampant crime, dwindling resources, and overpopulation. When a conspiracy at the top of the government frames him for murder, Dredd will have to go on a crusade to clear his name, dragging an albatross around his neck for him and the movie at large, a low-level criminal played by Rob Schneider. Andrew, Sylvester Stallone has done very few action, science fiction roles. Is that a good thing?
Yes.
Full stop.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think that, I don't know, I don't think it's his wheelhouse. He seems out of place in a science fiction role for some reason. Something about his demeanor and his cadence, and I feel badly said because it's just him as an actor and as a person. He seems out of place in science fiction.
Damn, you're making it real personal.
I know, but like it's just it's hard to explain. Like it's just there's something about him that doesn't lend it, I think, to future.
Wait, so you've seen Demolition Man, correct?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I've seen Demolition Man. I stand by what I said.
I love Demolition Man. It felt, yeah, but it did feel like Andrew was going to end it with like, and he's ugly too, going that far. But I will agree, like he doesn't seem that. As much as I love Demolition Man, he doesn't seem that suited for sci-fi.
Wesley Snipes was great. He was perfect in Demolition Man. I think he saved that movie, honestly.
He shines.
With Stallone, it's just Rocky, brilliant. The Rambo movie's brilliant. I like him as an actor, but there's just something about him and sci-fi it doesn't blend for some reason.
Pat, what do you think of the premise? Does it make sense for you? And do you think there are themes the movie might be at least whispering to us?
If we talk about like this movie compared to like another sci-fi movie like The Running Man, I think The Running Man really screams at you like the media is trying to control you, everything like that. I think this movie, I think it's more for the audience's enjoyment than it is for actual like any undertones of trying to deliver a secret message, in my opinion at least. I liked it. I thought it was a fun movie. It was my first time seeing it, and it's good overall, for sure.
So the film caught a lot of flack by die-hard Dredd fans because Stallone took the helmet off. Ignoring the source material, Andrew, do you feel like his Dredd is better with the helmet on or off?
It looks good as the whole judge uniform, but the way that the story went, it doesn't, to me it wouldn't make sense for him to have the helmet on the whole movie. Because he was cast out at one point. He was sentenced to go to the Aspen colony. You know, there's no reason for him to keep his helmet the whole movie. And so, as a story device, of course he's going to get his helmet taken off. Because he spends more time as a disgraced judge framed by other judges than he does an actual judge.
I like that argument. I wish you had made it back in the 90s when this came out. Standing on a street corner with a blowhorn.
Judge Dredd wasn't that bad.
Little sandwich board.
Talking about that Aspen penal colony. So they established that the Earth is mostly scorched. They're having trouble feeding people. Scarcity of resources. John, does it make sense to you at all that they would send their prisoners to the middle of the country when they're on the coast? How much fuel does that eat up?
Of all the resource issues, they don't talk about power concerns. And who knows, maybe, is this the same apocalypse that happens in Australia? Is this the Mad Max apocalypse?
Oh, you know me, I love blending. Blending franchises. I'll take it.
All right, yeah, so maybe this is how America dealt with it with the megacities, and Australia just like, let it all fall apart.
It's back in the 90s. You could have had Mel Gibson make a special cameo at the Aspen colony. Like somehow he made it to the States. And he's still getting screwed over.
He's all the way across the Great Salt Flats just to get thrown in prison because he's not a proper citizen. Yeah, I don't know why they're not just chucking him out into the savage wasteland. It's just like, go live in the cursed earth. Why are we building a whole penal colony?
Pat, have you seen the other Dredd movie?
I have not seen any Dredd movies until this one. No, I have not seen the one with Carl Urban.
Okay, then take two. Andrew. Is there anything that you would say Judge Dredd does better than the film simply titled Dredd?
No. The Carl Urban movie is better in every way.
Well, okay, let me give you a couple of examples. I think, regardless of the movie he's in, whether it's this camp or if in Dredd he could be more serious, Armand Assante, he's just acting his heart out, and when I think about the villain in Dredd, she just doesn't get my juices flowing as much as Assante.
Yeah, like, she didn't ham it up like Asante did. Definitely. She was more serious, but she was a bad person. At the end of the day, I know they're like two very different movies, because this one, there's like conspiracy elements and everything to it. So the story's much more grand than the Carl Urban Dredd, which is just like, oh, hey, there's a drug dealer in a building that we're going to raid. It's just a raid redemption, but with Judge Dredd. But God, is it great.
John, this is the second time Stallone and Rob Schneider were on screen together after Demolition Man. Let's get into it a bit more. What do you think of the way they use Schneider?
It was forced. It was just too forced. Schneider in Demolition Man, the character was a schmuck. The joke was he can't make it in an actual hard-nosed cop world. He's the model cop in that world. In this, he's just almost like, what was it, Superman 3 with Richard Pryor randomly yelling things when it looked like he was in front of a green screen. It was like he was added in post to just say really dumb shit.
I disagree. I think he did actually play an integral part in the story, because if it wasn't for Rob Schneider, the robot would have killed Dredd and Herschel.
Hershey.
Oh, it was Hershey? Okay, yeah, he would have killed them. Rob Schneider disabled the robot. He did serve a purpose, other than irritating us.
Master hacker, and how did you defeat the robot? He just pulled some wires out.
Did you see anyone else pulling those wires?
Touche. That's true. But you could have had anyone. Throw, off the top of my head, it should have been Oliver Platt for no reason. He just drops in, pulls some wires out, and then runs off back to whatever movie he was filming at the time.
Well, he was in every other 90s movie. He had to miss something. He had to pass on one project.
He dodged this bullet.
Him and Kevin Pollak were almost in every 90s movie.
Yeah.
Oh, I would have liked to have seen Pollock do this.
He would have been better than Schneider, yeah.
For the sake of editing, Andrew, just say Hershey once.
Hershey.
Thanks. And now you know I'm just going to keep all that in.
I know.
And also in Demolition Man, Schneider's in it for what, all of 10 minutes? So I think that's the best use of his talents. Pat, what would you say is the ratio of sci-fi to action here? And I'm going to assume you'll probably say more action. If so, do you think it's a worthy 90s entry?
I'm actually going to differ with you on that one. I'm going to say more sci-fi, less action. I felt it was a little slower than Fifth Element, for example. But that being said, it definitely falls right into the 90s action sci-fi mix, for sure.
Andrew, how do you feel the action here compares to Stallone's other stuff?
The action was pretty solid. I mean, it's typical Stallone fare in the sense that it was just a lot of guns and beating people up and grunting. The gunplay, I feel like it was more Cobra, because he's using a big gun too. I loved the scene with the cannibals, especially when Stallone yelled guilty and plugged that one cannibal like 7 times. It was great, dude. This movie had some great moments.
And you have TSC to thank for getting you to finally watch this masterpiece.
I do. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
I think you enjoyed it more than any of us thought you would. Certainly more than I thought. Not that I want my guests to hate the movies, but man, I'm glad I didn't bet on that. Now, I haven't seen all of his action movies. Out of his iconic ones, even though he's supposed to be playing cold and robotic in this movie, there's more personality that Stallone plays. I love his I Am the Law. I love his I Knew You'd Say That, as cheesy and obvious as it is. He just seems to enjoy dispensing justice in this. John, what was your favorite action beat?
I think when he's fighting the cannibals. It's just him, raw, guilty, bang, 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 bang. He showed the most actual, real emotions in that scene for some reason. Everything else did seem hammy and over the top. This was still over the top, but it was the least, I think, over the top. As ultra-violent as this movie got, where everybody got shot 50 times.
That was probably the most irritating part for me, too. I think it's starting the cannibal scene at them shooting down the plane, and then the cannibals all progressively getting killed, and then Rob Schneider being a little bitch and flipping sides, and then only to flip sides back once he realizes he's giving himself up to cannibals.
I'm surprised none of you said the bike ride when they're flying through the city, and I think it's because Schneider is riding bitch. I feel like if he wasn't in that sequence and it was just Stallone, you guys probably would have liked that more.
I think you're right, but I would say that was the one scene for me where the special effects fell off a little bit, because I liked the way the movie looked, but that scene was a little like, okay, like they ran out of special effects money at that point.
Andrew, can you shout out a scene that didn't have action?
I really liked the scene where Rico reprograms the DNA sequencer with his own DNA. Because of course he's going to. You know he's evil as hell. So he's not going to stick to any plan.
You could never control yourself. What makes you think you can control these things?
Because you're in control. You be head of the council. You choose. And you choose quickly, too.
I should have put you down myself. Personally.
You know, I never understood that. Why did you judge me? Why did you judge me?
You killed innocent people.
The means to an end.
You started a massacre.
I caused the revolution.
You betrayed the law.
Law! I betrayed this! Your council's experiment, which failed!
I did also like the scene when Hershey and that one guy who was like the digital evidence expert when he was just staring at the photograph of baby Dredd and they realized, oh, I loved how like everything faded out, the baby's the only real thing, and then like the real background image comes in and it's just like clearly a rendered scientific lab background. I really like that sequence too. Not just because it ended on a little bit of a haha note. It was an interesting twist of like all the photos to be doctored. It was his family photo. Because I don't know the Dredd lore, so I don't know how true this is to the comics.
It's funny how there's so much future tech, but then if they had just doctored that image using Photoshop, there's no way they would have found the original backdrop.
Yeah.
That kind of defeats the purpose if you keep all the data that was originally in the file. Like what was it? Was it a project file that they had? John, am I late to the party in that it wasn't until this viewing that I realized how many similarities besides Schneider there are between Judge Dredd and Demolition Man?
From my point of view, probably not, but from critics' point of view, I'm sure that's the reason they just stopped trying these sci-fi Rob Schneider vehicles.
Because anyone listening that is later than I am, here are the things I noticed are shared between both films. We've got a top official that springs a homicidal maniac. Rico wants to unleash his Janus soldiers. Phoenix wanted to free inmates. You got totalitarian governments, stringent rules, a post-calamity future. Both Rico and Phoenix, they're really just variations on sowing chaos as their biggest shtick. I usually think of Stallone having more artistic integrity, but this really feels like he did it for the cash.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, because when I think of Stallone movies, I also think a lot of times of... Because I know it's not his entire filmography as something that he produced and wrote and directed, but that's what I think of when I think of Stallone, is he does a lot of his own vehicles. In general, when I see a Stallone movie that wasn't at least written by Stallone, I think, okay, he's in it for the paycheck.
I guess I'll just throw this out to all of you because, well, you've shattered my perception of who you guys are as viewers of film. Specifically you, Andrew, liking this movie as much as you did. Do any of you have criticisms for Judge Dredd that don't include Schneider? Okay, I'll just insert the cricket sounds.
I was waiting for someone else to go first, is what I was waiting for.
I was gearing it toward you originally, but you freaked me out there. Okay, buddy, I'm sorry for doubting you. Go ahead.
The cannibal scene as an action beat I thought was great. I didn't like how they were just these weird robotic hillbillies. I didn't like how they pronounced it Janus and not Janus like it is in GoldenEye. Even though he was the star of the movie, I think they could have gotten someone better than Stallone to play Judge Dredd. He had his moments, but for the most part, I felt like he was just kind of out of place. There was that one scene, it was like when the bad guy, when Rico was explaining his whole plan, of course, with the clones, and you just see Stallone standing there, and it just looks like he's posing so hard. And I just thought, man, he's just trying to look tough. I didn't really like it.
When he first pulls up and the opening shot is of his shoes, you can clearly see that they're lifted. It just gets hokey from there. And anyone who shot, no one shot once. Everyone is shot at least 6 times per getting shot. In general, just for that robot warrior, who I think is a reference to another comic from the same makers of Judge Dredd. He'd shoot and there'd just be 15 holes in a guy. And it was like everybody got shot that many times. It was ultra violent. I don't want to complain about it because I'm a huge Kubrick stan, but it was unnecessary violence at points.
I do have another criticism. The clones being awakened early was gross and creepy, which I liked, but it went nowhere in terms of the action. None of them came out of the tubes and had to be dealt with. They all just blew up. They were animated early for nothing, other than just to be like, oh, okay, they look kind of nasty, but Dredd didn't have to kill any of them, neither did Diane Lane. It was completely unnecessary, and so I wish that, in terms of the action sequence, they had to kill a few of them, and so you can kind of see how a threat that even the unfinished clones were. Other than that, it was just a nasty zombie shot.
It's like they went, oh my god, we're running out of money. Can we shoot this with the zombies? No? Okay.
It could have elevated that last action sequence above the cannibal scene if they went that extra step. It's like John's been saying, they were shooting everyone 6 times, at least, and so you could have made it just even more over the top. Like I said, I'm not familiar with the comics, but I know the comics are pretty over the top themselves at times, so lean into it.
There's one small thing they could have done to make that half-formed zombie scene better. I noticed none of those naked people in the tubes that we saw, I don't think any of them had breasts. They all look like dudes.
The movie's kind of sexist.
I don't know, Stallone's legs look like he missed a few leg days. He looked a little feminine.
I wouldn't say he looked femme. It was because of this movie I actually looked up how tall Sylvester Stallone is. If you watch that scene where Enrico's explaining his plan to Dredd, you can see Stallone turn around and step up on something to become eye level with Rico. They betrayed him in that shot. So it was like, you had to see him take a step up, and that's when I looked up his height, and I was like, okay, he's not super short, but I learned I'm taller than Sylvester Stallone.
My big criticism, I think they should have gotten rid of that opening with the literal pages of the comic book. To me, that makes a clear statement that they aren't taking the material seriously, and neither should the audience. And if that was their attitude, don't broadcast it at the beginning of your picture.
It reminded me of what bad times the 90s were for comic books, especially art-wise, where everything was jagged and everyone had belts and spikes everywhere.
And really overblown musculatures.
Huge muscles, and the ladies were skeletons that someone put skin on.
Well, let's round things out with TLDL, Too Long Didn't Listen, where I ask you guys some rapid-fire questions. John, which movie was the dumbest?
Oh, Judge Dredd.
Pat, which one had the best action?
Fifth Element.
Andrew, which one utilized science fiction the best?
Fifth Element.
John, who is the best hero?
Corbin Dallas.
Pat, who is the best villain?
I'm debating here. Zurg is really good. I mean, Gary Oldman's gold in everything he does, but I think the argument that he doesn't confront Corbin Dallas in the entire movie is compelling. So I'm going to go with Rico.
Andrew, is Fifth Element a better Bruce Willis flick, or Judge Dredd a better Stallone movie?
Fifth Element's a better Willis flick.
Pat, which movie has aged the best?
Fifth Element.
John, which movie screams the 90s?
Judge Dredd.
Pat, who's a better actress? Carla Gugino, Diane Lane, or Mila Jovovich?
Diane Lane.
And the last question, the most important question for you, Andrew. Who's more bangable? Carla Gugino, Diane Lane, or Mila Jovovich?
Diane Lane.
Oh, wow, that was fast.
Absolutely.
Diane Lane now or 1995?
1995.
Time knows no limits for Diane Lane.
Talent is attractive.
Wait. Do all you guys say Diane Lane?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, are you thinking more about the character she was playing or just the actress on her own?
Both.
Yeah, for me it's both.
Definitely both.
Oh, okay. I guess peer pressure wins. I'd say Diane Lane as well. You've reached the end of this episode of The Screen Companion. Thank you for listening.